Have you ever wished you could look into the past to predict the future? Well, when it comes to data, that's not science fiction. It's actually a super powerful science. Today, we're going to deconstruct the stories hidden inside our data to see how we can make way smarter decisions about tomorrow.
I mean, think about a real-world problem for a second. How does an online store know exactly how much to stock for something like Black Friday? Or how does a coffee shop manager figure out staffing for that chaotic holiday rush? It can't just be a guess, right?
The secret, as you've probably guessed, is hiding in plain sight, in their historical data. Every single sales record, every website click, every customer who walks through the door, it all tells a story. And if we can learn how to read that story, we can start to write the next chapter ourselves.
Okay, so before we can even think about forecasting, we have to become data detectives. Our first job is to really understand the structure of our data, to see what forces have been shaping it over time.
The main tool for this job is called Time Series Decomposition. Now that sounds super technical, right? But it's actually a pretty simple idea. You take a complex stream of data and you break it into its basic, understandable building blocks. It's kind of like taking a car engine apart just to see how all the pieces work together.
And that word, story, is so important here. We're not just crunching numbers for the sake of it. We're trying to uncover a narrative. What is the data actually doing? And maybe more importantly, why is it doing it?
So what are these building blocks? Well, it turns out that pretty much every time series, whether you're looking at daily sales or global temperatures, is a mix of three fundamental forces. Let's break them down.
First up, we've got the trend. This is the big picture movement. So imagine you run a coffee shop. Over a few years, your shop gets more and more popular, and your total number of customers slowly but surely goes up. That steady, long-term growth, that's your trend. Next up is seasonality. Now, these are the predictable rhythms in your data. In our coffee shop, there's a huge rush every morning, then a quiet spell in the afternoon, and maybe another little peak in the evening. That daily pattern is seasonality. Same thing for weekly patterns, like slower weekends, or even yearly ones, like a big spike in iced coffee sales every single summer.
And finally, after we account for that long-term trend and all the predictable cycles, whatever's left over is the residual. You can just think of it as noise. This is the random, unpredictable stuff. Back at our coffee shop, maybe a sudden downpour causes an unexpected drop in customers, or a local festival creates a surprise spike in sales. That's the residual.
So how does this all fit together? Well, a great way to think about it is like a prism. The decomposition process takes that single beam of your raw, observed data and splits it into its three core components: the long-term trend, the repeating seasonality, and the random residuals.
Okay, quick but super important detail here. These components can be combined in two different ways. In an additive model, the seasonal swings are always about the same size. Think of temperature. But in a multiplicative model, the seasonal effects grow as your numbers grow. Holiday sales are a perfect example. It's not just an extra $1,000 in sales each year, it's an extra 20%, which becomes a way bigger number as your baseline sales get bigger.
All right, so we figured out how to read the story of the past. Awesome. But how do we use that knowledge to actually write the future? Well, this brings us to an incredibly powerful forecasting tool called Profit. Profit was actually developed by the team at Facebook, which is now Meta, and it was designed specifically for the kind of messy, real-world data that businesses deal with all the time. It's built from the ground up to handle things like missing data, strong seasonal patterns, and special events, all while being pretty easy for us humans to use and understand.
So how does it work? Well, Profit builds its forecast using a formula that's going to look really, really familiar. It starts with a foundation, just like we did, by modeling that long-term trend.
Then it layers on the seasonality. And the magic here is that Profit automatically spots daily, weekly, and yearly patterns all at once. And here's where it gets really cool. It adds another piece specifically for holidays, so it can learn the unique impact of events like Black Friday or Christmas.
And finally, it accounts for any of that random noise or error. So you see, the finished formula is basically a forecasting version of the decomposition we just learned about. It uses those exact same building blocks to project into the future.
So you might be thinking, okay, that's neat, but why is Profit such a game changer? What makes it so different from the traditional forecasting models that have been around for decades? Let's put it head to head with the old guard.
This chart really lays it all out.
When you compare it to traditional models like ARIMA, which are these really heavy-duty statistical methods, profit is just so much more automated. For example, ARIMA often requires your data to be stationary, which is this complex prep step. Profit, it just handles it. It automatically finds seasonality and lets you easily add holidays, tasks that are super manual and difficult with older models. And maybe best of all, Profit's components are easy to understand, so you can actually see why the forecast is what it is.
So, as we start to wrap this up, it's really important to remember that these two ideas, decomposition and profit, are two sides of the same coin. They're partners on this journey from understanding the past to predicting the future. Here's the absolute best way to think about it. Decomposition is your diagnostic tool. It's like an X-ray that lets you see the hidden structure of what's already happened. Profit, on the other hand, is your predictive tool. It takes that blueprint and uses it to forecast what is likely to happen next. One is for insight, the other is for foresight.
So the bottom line is this. All time series data tells a story through its trend, seasonality, and noise. We use decomposition to read that story from the past, and we use incredible tools like Profit to write the next chapter, making forecasting way more accessible than it's ever been before. And that leaves us with one final big question to think about. Whether it's in your business, your personal projects, or just the world around you, there are patterns everywhere. So what story is hidden in your data? And what could you predict if you just knew how to read it?